Welcome to day 6 of our podcast studying the transformational book, The Great Controversy. In this chapter, we will talk about John Huss and Jerome of Prague, who, just like John Wycliffe, were forerunners of the Reformation. These amazing heroes of the faith during the Middle Ages brought the saving truths found in the scriptures to thousands across the European continent. The times of the Reformers are far away from us, and the hardships they faced bear little resemblance to the comforts with which we can live our faith today. The gospel had been planted in Bohemia, now Czech Republic, as early as the 9th century. John Huss, a Bohemian theologian born in 1369, was called to live biblical truths in a society where the worst vices reigned, precisely because the Bible had been banned. The Pope had declared that the Almighty was pleased to be worshipped in an unknown tongue, and that the neglect to this provision had been the cause of many evils and heresies. Despite being a priest, Huss was able to read Wycliffe's works and felt a conviction that would lead him away from Rome. At that time, 2 English artists arrived in Prague and created 2 paintings in the main square of the city. Inside one of the paintings, one could see the humble Galilean in his triumphal entry into Jerusalem, surrounded by his disciples. In the other painting, one of those majestic and dazzling papal processions could be seen. The meekness of Christ contrasted with the pride and arrogance of the Pope. The pictures made a deep impression on Huss' mind and induced him to study the Bible and Wycliffe's writings more earnestly. He immediately began to denounce the pride, ambition, and corruption of the clergy. Persecution against him soon followed, and the Pope proceeded to judge and condemn the reformer, who struggled in his own conscience as he continued to see the Church as the bride of Christ, and the Pope as the vicar or representative of God on earth. More and more clearly, he understood that the Bible should be the only norm for his conscience. John Huss continued to preach the Word of God with clarity, and the people gladly received his teachings. He was soon joined by Jerome, a Czech scholastic philosopher, theologian, reformer, and professor, born in Prague in 1365. Jerome was one of the chief followers of John Huss and had also studied Wycliffe's writings. Through the united efforts of the two, the Reformation progressed more rapidly. Little by little, the Lord was revealing more light to those courageous men who were to lead God's people out of the dense darkness. Meanwhile, in Rome, 3 rival popes were fighting for the throne. The emperor was forced to convene a council in Constance, a university city located in the south of Germany. The 3 aspiring popes and Huss himself were summoned as promoters of the new ideas. The danger to the life of the reformer was evident, and although he traveled protected by the King of Bohemia and by the Emperor himself, Huss would meet his death at the council. When he had finished his exposition, he was thrown into prison. However, he would not be alone. The same Pope who had condemned him would end up in prison with him. The council decided the dismissal of the other 2 anti-popes, and a new pope was appointed in their place. Despite enjoying the sympathy of the emperor, Huss was condemned to death. When he was required to choose between abandoning his doctrines or suffering death, he chose the fate of the martyrs. He affirmed, "I esteem his salvation more than this poor body destined to die." His voice was silenced in the flames of the stake. Huss no longer existed, but the truths for which he had died could not perish. Shortly thereafter, it was Jerome who was imprisoned to suffer the same fate as Huss. The papal authorities placed him in a cell where he remained for a year in extraordinarily harsh conditions. They forced him to retract, and Jerome, weakened by illness, agreed to what they asked of him, until his conscience made him decide he would not again deny his Lord to escape a brief period of suffering. Shortly, the sentence of death was pronounced against him. They led him at once to the very place where Huss had given his life. He went through the ordeal singing, and his face was lit up with joy and peace. The flames did their work, and Jerome also sealed his testimony of faith with death. Two champions of the faith had been silenced, but their works would remain, to the sorrow of their enemies. The papal work was not finished. Not content with wiping out the reformers, they also declared war on those who had supported them. The Princess of Bohemia had denounced the illegality of the trials that had sentenced Huss and Jerome to death, so the Pope organized a crusade against Bohemia. Several times did the papal Rome attempt to conquer the city with large armies, who were promised absolution in heaven, but again and again they failed in their attempt. As in the past, what was not achieved by force would be achieved by the cunning of deception. Dear friends, despite the horrible acts committed by the papal authorities, the light of truth shone ever more brightly in Europe, as it also wants to shine today in our hearts.